And without further ado, we bring in our friend Luke Braun, Locked on Vikings, a borderline regular this time of year on the CHGO Bears podcast. Luke, we appreciate you taking time. So, Luke, who's the better quarterback, Caleb Williams or J.J. McCarthy?
I mean, Caleb Williams is a better prospect for sure, right? But who's to say? We all thought that RG3 would have a better career than Russell Wilson, right?
Let me ask you this. I mean, yeah, right into the firing line with this, and we're excited for this, see these two quarterbacks ascend together and see where they go. But let me ask you this. When there was talks of maybe the Vikings moving up to 3 for J.J. McCarthy, were you a proponent of that, or was that something that made you nervous?
Without blowing up anybody's spot, I knew that wasn't real. I knew that if they were going up to 3, that it would be Drake May. The idea that it would be for J.J. McCarthy was people who had heard that the Vikings liked J.J. McCarthy a lot. They fell in love with him, especially after they talked to him at the Combine, but they were in love with him for a while. As like a lot of people have been in love with J.J. McCarthy like at the pro circuit since he was like 16 years old. So I knew that the Vikings were really in on him, and then the rumors that they were trying to move the Patriots off of pick number 3, people just kind of connected those two dots and said, oh, they love this quarterback. They're even going to trade up for him. But they loved May more. They like that. I mean, that Josh McCown coached him in high school back in the day. Drake May was the dream of dream scenarios, and they moved as much heaven and earth as they possibly could to try to get the Patriots off that pick. But, hey, if you're looking at your franchise quarterback, you're just going to take him. So sure. Patriots said no. Vikings said, okay, we're going to call New York's bluff, because if New York takes J.J. McCarthy, we would rather risk that than pay what it takes not to. And so they chose to call New York's bluff. They were right. And then he ends up falling all the way. They had heard some other rumblings of the Rams and somebody else trading up with the Jets. So they said, we'll just take that. We'll throw a fourth and a fifth at him, and now we've got our quarterback, no big deal. And we keep our first. That was huge. They really were ready to lose that other first round pick. So they were very pleased that it fell in such a way where they could still do that and then turn that guy into the third defender off the board in Dallas Turner.
So, Luke, it's July 9th as we're kind of recording this podcast, but when it comes to who you envision the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings to be in week 1, is it J.J. McCarthy or is it Sam Darnold going to be?
No, almost certainly Darnold. Right now, what they're doing with J.J. McCarthy, so I did a whole Patreon video on this if you want to go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. If you all want Caleb Williams content as well, I did him way back in February before it was even sure that he was going to be a Bear. This was before the Fields trade and all that. So I did an eval on him that's like an hour long if Bears fans want to see that, and that's free to watch. But for patrons, I did one on J.J. McCarthy and what they appear to be working on based on what I can see in OTAs and like the nuances of footwork that they're having him go to. Essentially, one of the things about J.J. McCarthy that made his deep ball in particular struggle was that he would over-rotate. And if you imagine like a pitcher throwing a pitch, their hips come all the way through, their leg comes flying all the way around. You don't want that in a football throw, and J.J. McCarthy had it, which on longer throws that require a little bit more touch, you're going to have... like that's going to really show up. So you would see a lot of deep misses, especially across your body to the left and all that. And you see that reflected in accuracy stats. So they're working on that. They're trying to get them to rotate things a little bit less. I don't know if any of you golf, but if you've ever tried to change your golf swing, you suck in the meantime. That's where we're at right now. So absolutely no expectation for J.J. McCarthy to start week 1. That's not the plan for him. If he finishes, if he gets his mechanics right in time and he can, and he's better than Darnold and he beats, but like they don't want him to be in a camp battle. So he's QB3 right now. Because being in a camp battle makes it harder for you to work on those things because there's a little extra pressure on every throw. What if I lose my job because I throw this interception because I'm in the middle of changing my mechanics? So he's not even fighting for QB1 right now. It's going to be Darnold until it isn't.
That's interesting that they bumped him all the way to QB3 because the Bears went through this with Justin Fields and they couldn't decide where they'd put him from a rep standpoint, whether it be QB3 or QB2. They didn't want to have him as a starter. And then they hemmed and hawed to try to decide QB3 or QB2.
Who was 2 back then?
Well, they had
should have been Nick Foles.
Right. They had
Dalton and Foles. Yeah.
Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. And so then they moved him up to QB2, and then Andy Dalton gets hurt in the second week of the season. and now all of a sudden Justin Fields gets catapulted into starting, and maybe it was.
You had that
bit
Browns game that was that was kind of broken.
Yeah, so it's interesting that the Vikings
yeah,
making that route.
So I think a big reason is just practical. Because if you're gonna stop practice to like work on your QB's mechanics, which is probably worth it when he's the guy that's like your franchise QB now, right? Like he's your first round QB, he's your guy. He's your career's tied to this guy. Probably worth stopping practice to like fix a hitch in his giddy up if you want. You'd rather do that and take time away from the threes. Like that's a big reason to do that. And there's just no pressure. Like there's absolutely no pressure on him right now. There is there's no deadline on it. It's here's what we want you to be better at. We want you to get through this. When we feel you are comfortable, then we will start to think, do we want to put you in over Sam Darnold, or are you better than Sam Darnold? But they haven't even started asking the question yet, and that's very much on purpose.
Well, for the record, Mark Carman can attest I am a impeccable golfer, tremendous talent.
He's really good, Luke. Nobody can shoot 96 on the worst course in America better than Greg Braggs. Well, Luke, hold on a second here. Because when you talk about mechanic changes, that's like it might work, it might not work. You never know if that's going to click. But I've also heard like the intel that we had is the Bears loved Caleb, but the person they loved the second most in the draft was JJ. So this mechanic change, I'm assuming they knew when they drafted him that they were going to go through this. Or is this something that popped up like, this is
O'Connell's vision, I think. This is Kevin O'Connell, QB guru, former QB himself, saying, I know what you need to do to maximize. And the idea that it'll maybe take a couple months to come to fruition and he won't play right away in his rookie year is a pretty small cost. I don't think they care that much. But, for example, that might be something that they maybe would have liked Drake May more. Now, I actually think Drake May needs to wait for longer. And if he starts right away for the Patriots, I think that that's a mistake. But the kind of gold at the end of the rainbow is more worth it. So yeah, and these changes are pretty subtle. This is not what I think, like with Fields, you had to teach him how to think a little bit and how to, like you had to change his habits. And this is it's very similar to what I had to say about Caleb Williams as well, which is like, you need to teach him how to play ball when everybody's as fast as him. And how to kind of navigate a much different world with much different angles. That's going to be a learning curve for Caleb Williams as well. And whether you want him to do that, on the third team where there's no pressure and there's no stakes, or whether you want him to do that in live action, I think that's very debatable. And you could ask 10 different coaches and get 10 different answers about why. But to answer your question, yes, I think that it was always going to be a learning curve, and Kevin O'Connell always had, okay, if we draft him, we're going to do this with you, and we're not going to care if that means you miss week 1. That's not at issue.
Luke, to kind of further this conversation, to move on just from JJ McCarthy and the quarterback, when you look at this Vikings roster as it stands today, what are the biggest weaknesses but also strengths that you see on this 2024 team?
I mean, so the pass catchers are going to be the strengths. Everybody's corners are going to be really stressed out. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. People are talking about Jordan Addison like he's taken a step forward as well. And I think he almost had 1,000 yards last year. He got hurt a couple of times, or he missed like half a game. And then obviously sharing a field with Justin Jefferson for half of the season is going to make it hard to be a 1,000-yard receiver. And TJ Hawkinson for most of the season. TJ Hawkinson hurt, but it sounds like they're expecting him to come back maybe halfway through the season would be, I guess, my guess. It doesn't sound like he's going to miss the whole year, which we were actually kind of worried about. So you get him back at some point, obviously JJ. There's a lot of threats in the secondary, and the O-line, especially the bookend tackles, have been really strong. They're coming off a really strong year. They're bringing back the same group of people. They might change the starting order a little bit. That's kind of a thing over here. We're maybe making a change at left guard that nobody agrees with. But either way, like they're basically running back a really good offensive core. On the other side of the ball, the corners are a disaster. There's no real way to sugarcoat it. I like Byron Murphy a lot. They want him to play inside. He's a nickel corner. They have Shaq Griffin, or whatever's left of him, on like a cheap deal, basically de facto starting, and a bunch of young guys that aren't working out. So that is a really, really tough group. I think the run defense as well looks really suspicious. You have Harrison Phillips. I love Harrison Phillips, but he can only cover maximum 2 gaps. Then you have Jonathan Bullard, who played fine as a role player, but you don't really want him to be more than that. And then like 6 Dean Lowrys. They left Dean Lowry and they replaced him with like Jerry Tillery and a whole bunch of people about that level. Like a whole bunch of guys that like, hey, maybe they're depth, but if they're starting every play, you got something going wrong. They did replace Daniil Hunter with kind of this aggregate of a bunch of edge rushers. Jonathan Grenard, they're very excited about him. Dallas Turner, everybody's super excited about him after OTAs, by the way, but not even in pads, big grain of salt. Hopefully they get something out of that edge room, but it's like, man, it just kind of feels like you can just like run right through this defense. Or if you want to throw on them on the exterior, there's a really good chance that if you have the Vikings in 3-corner personnel, that you've got somebody on the outside that the Vikings don't really trust, whether it's a Caleb Evans or Andrew Booth or somebody else coming out of nowhere. Somebody is going to be on the outside that you can target all the time, and it's just going to be a matter of can you get past the whatever blitz Brian Flores is dialed up this time.
I mean, so in terms of expectations for the season, whether it's the fan base, the media, or the team itself, is this kind of looked at more as a transition year and accepting of lower expectations? The coaches aren't necessarily on the hot seat because, like, when Justin Fields first came in, Matt Nagy was clearly on the hot seat. So that played into a lot of the decisions and some of the mistakes they made in that development process. So you're saying and shaking your head a little bit here that that the Vikings are kind of accepting that this is a transition year.
I would say that their seat is about as cold as the seat gets. For a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, like I think Andy Reid probably has the coolest seat in the league, but it is about as cold as you can get for this situation. Everybody in the world understands that we have that rushing this is the best way to make it fail. So I think there is a patience. Now, in terms of the fan base, I don't know what kind of insane person you're going to end up talking to, so I can't speak for that. Personally, yeah, I mean, talk to me around Halloween. We'll see how I'm feeling. If they're 1-7 and JJ McCarthy is already in the game because Sam Darnold threw 4 interceptions and then JJ McCarthy threw 4 interceptions, we might be clicking some panic buttons. But like that's pretty worst case scenario, I think in reality, you're going to have like a 3-6 start with Sam Darnold. Eventually JJ McCarthy shows up, takes over a season that's already gone, and you just kind of hope that he looks comfortable and you don't really care about the record this year. That's the way I'm. And that's to be expected. Honestly, I think that's the way every rookie QB team should be, except the Falcons, who don't really count. Like, I think the Bears should look at this and say, if Caleb is good, I don't care.
Yeah, I think, obviously all roads, lead to Caleb in terms of our worry or hope that it works out for him. But yeah,
be careful with that phrase.
Well, I mean,
all roads lead to Rome means something different now.
Yeah, well, and then we also have Rome Odunze now.
Yeah.
So exactly. So but I was curious if you had any kind of expectation but you said it maybe could be a 3-6 start, but like with Sam Darnold resurgence with Kevin, the brainiac that is Kevin O'Connell.
There's some homers that are like, what if he's actually good now? Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I don't think we're seeing the Geno Smith, because like Geno took like 8 years to do what he did, to have the turnaround that he did. I think if Darnold's going to be on that trajectory, like let's check back in 2028.
What's your explanation, Luke, as to why the players love Kevin so much? Kevin O'Connell, obviously the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. Like we see these polls that he's got a huge approval rating. Like what's your understanding of why he's resonated in that locker room so much?
So I think you're talking about the NFLPA thing, which has a lot to do with the organization as well. The Wilfs have put in a lot of money to making the facilities state-of-the-art, food state-of-the-art, like everything, having the right staff so everybody can get as much attention as possible. Nobody feels like stretched too thin, right? Which is very different compared to like Arizona or Washington, where everybody's trying to pinch a penny, and then you can't get into the trainer's office because there's only one person and there's 6 people who are supposed to see him today. So like that's, I think, a big part of it. But with O'Connell in particular, he's a very laid back guy. And that's what they were looking for. Coming off of Mike Zimmer, this red faced, crabby old man, that would kind of, he'd lay into you if you did something wrong. And while a lot of players respect that, A lot of players need that. They say, like, I want somebody who isn't going to sugarcoat things for me, who isn't trying to coddle me, who's, if I do the wrong footwork, tell me I did the wrong footwork. I can handle being yelled at. I'm a big boy. A lot of Zimmer's players said that, but toward the end, it stopped being productive. And so the contrast between that and O'Connell really set up this culture of really like calm, collected problem solving. If there is an issue, and there always is, it's football. Whatever we've got in front of us, let's work together. Let's not put too much stress on ourselves. If you mess up, you're not in trouble. Here's just do it different next time. And it's teaching. And it's like, it's like surfer beach vibes. It's very surfer bro. Everything is very like relaxed, which sometimes you need a sense of urgency, and like late in games last year, a lack of urgency really got them. So there are drawbacks to this, but yeah, I think everybody likes working with him. I think he makes an effort to make a connection with all of his players too. Like on the defense and everybody, like to really have a relationship. That's kind of what you get with like a younger guy too, who can like really relate to him. He's in his 30s and players are in their 20s. Like you're not that different.
It's just like
I could tell you this. I always love going to US Bank Stadium to cover games there. It's the best stadium, I think, in the league. But one more question for you, Luke. You got Vikings add Aaron Jones, a guy that traditionally like destroyed the Bears defense. What are your expectations for what he can do to that Vikings rushing attack?
Yeah, people are really stoked on him. He does not look like he is old and slow in OTAs, at least. He's like the speed is there. It looks like he's fresh. You always have to temper it, but because, who knows how fatigue is going to affect him. And especially because of that injury history, how much of him are you going to get? When he's on the field, I feel great about it, but you kind of have to just pencil in 2 games where he's not going to be there. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be the bona fide bell cow. You'll probably have 2 drives a game where Ty Chandler, the backup, will come in and spell him. But otherwise, if he's healthy, he's in. So we're excited about him if he stays healthy. That's, I guess, the way you have to put it.
Who's winning the North, Luke?
Probably the Lions again, honestly. I think the Packers could take it. There are some questions I need them to answer before I really like fall in. And then I think with you guys and us, I think our eye is more on the future than the present, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's definitely where I wanted to go with you on this, because last year at this time, 3 in a row, I had you and Matt Derry from Locked On Vikings and Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers and Bears.
Right, you guys made the rounds.
Yeah, we made the rounds here, and you guys just do it. You guys do a great job. And at the time last year, Bears fans, as we always do every offseason, getting very puffy chested, writing checks that the team was going to have to cash.
Because it started against the Packers last year, right? So there was like all this trash talk leading up, and then it was a blowout.
And we all most Bears fans across the board, except for one Mark Carman, were just adamant that the Bears were going to have a great year. And Justin Fields.
Yeah, I remember that. He was going to finally the potential. They're still saying it in Pittsburgh. He's going to take over for Russell. Surely this year.
And you were critical when you came on, and you had your questions about Justin Fields. And people can go back to the comments on the video I had with Luke last year, mad? Where people were like, "Hey, what does this guy know?" And you know what? At the end of the day, you proved to be right. So credit to you. So now I want to ask you again, like coming into this year, you said you did a breakdown of Caleb Williams, but just in totality, you'd say the Bears are looking towards the future. But what Ryan Poles is doing now, completely rebuilt this roster, changed the whole look, bringing in all these different weapons, Keenan Allen, obviously, and Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift, Caleb Williams, of course, and everything that's coming together. Montez Sweat's here now since the last time we spoke. Are you buying what Ryan Poles is doing with the Chicago Bears and seeing the vision that Bears fans think that this could turn into something special here very soon?
I think it's been too slow. I think that's my critique of Ryan Poles, is that he did a lot of amassing assets, but without the crazy like leap up push toward excellence and greatness and contention that you're supposed to see with that. All I heard this time a year ago was how much cap space the Chicago Bears had. But I don't even think they had the most active free agency, maybe not even the second most active free agency in the NFC North. So what gives, right? It's not like the old Ryan Pace draft classes gave you a whole bunch of guys to extend, right? That was my thing with Ryan Poles, is like, if you're kind of tearing everything down so you can liquidate everything and get a pocketbook full of money that you can go and draft picks that you can go spend on stuff. Okay, where is it? Where is this like spending spree? And you bring in like what's his name? Edmonds, the linebacker.
Yep.
And so it's like it's been too conservative. I want to see him get more aggressive with this because right now they are the third best team in the division probably. After all that rebuilding, you've rebuilt to be the third best team in the division, and like maybe you sneak into a 7 seed. Is that where we're topping out? And if not, if the build still isn't done, well, it's year 3. Why isn't it done yet? So that's a timeline for me with Ryan Poles. But in terms of like what I think you're actually asking is expectations for this year. I guess I have questions too about the Bears. The offense is, I think, built the way it wants to be built. The defense still feels like it's a ways away, but the offense feels like this is what it is clear what Ryan Poles' vision was. QB we believe in, couple of weapons we can be really excited about, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze. So that's going to be the trio. And if Ryan Poles' Chicago Bears are going to win a Lombardi, we're going to see what that looks like now. At least we're going to see the seeds of it. We're going to see, okay, at least that trio is really this powerful thing, and they're going to, put up dueling 1,000-yard seasons, and we're going to have, this crazy thing. We're going to see that now, or when Caleb Williams is ready, because the first few weeks there will be growing pains. I fully expect that, and that's fine. That's we can all be really patient with that. I will hope. So from the Bears, it's very similar to the Vikings because the Bears and the Vikings are in similar spots right now. I don't really care if I'm a Bears fan, if they're 7-10 or if they're 10-7, or if they're 5-12. I don't care. If Caleb Williams looks good, if Rome and Caleb are the duo that everybody wants them to be, if DJ Moore, now that he isn't the only pass catcher worth a damn on the team, pops off, if all of that works out, then I don't care.
Fair enough.
Luke, you do not speak for Bears fans, and this is actually a very interesting conversation for us to have about exactly what you just said. Great stuff, and I mean this in the fullest compliment, but Luke, I think at least a couple days a week you perhaps sleep with a football. You love the sport so much. Is that true? Do you ever cuddle with? I mean, I know that Nick does, and Braggs has got like 3 balls in his bed, because he's so versatile. But what do you ever just cuddle a Duke or something like that?
If I were ever going to get intimate with football paraphernalia, it'd be a blocking sled.
There we go. Yeah. There we go. So rough and tumble. NFC North, baby. There you go, Nick.
Black and blue division, baby.
Yeah. Mark sleeps in a bed of tennis balls. He just got back from Wimbledon, and
gotcha. Do you have a skirt too, or
he didn't bring his British accent to the interview?
Oh, I did not. Hey, Luke, really thorough. Awesome to have you on, man. Continued success to you. We greatly appreciate it. And hey, it should be a fun year.
Anytime.